Chris Insley. He is the second speaker for the topic Engineers and Communities. Chris's background is the founder and director of 37 Degrees South, which is a consulting firm which spearheads sustainable business and Indigenous economic development. He has worked with a number of New Zealand iwi to develop great strategies, and I'll hand over to Chris who will give background on presentation of the Kaitiakitanga community project.
Thank you, Chris. Kia ora tātou. Tuatahi ka mihi atu ki etahi o koutou no maitahu I tai mai nei tēnei wā, ka mihi atu ki a koutou. Ngā mihi ki a koutou no tōku nei whānau, no tōku nei iwi o te whānau wāpani. Nō reira ka mihi atu ki a maitahu, ka mihi atu ki a koutou, ngā rangatahi mahi ana I roto I tēnei whare wāna. Really, just briefly, I just acknowledge Ngāi Tahu and the iwi of the Waipounamu here in the South Island, and secondly, I acknowledge you as young, bright young minds studying engineering. I think you're playing an important role in this debate going forward in New Zealand. I've drawn the short straw, so I'm here to talk to you when your probably minds are starting to dull. You're getting a little bit tired and hoha. But I'm going to talk to you about a little project that we've been running with Engineers Without Borders. And the kind of framework for my discussion here today is really to kind of give you a little bit of an insight first into some of the things that are going on within the Maori economy. And if you like, that is a source for engineering, if you like, projects going out there into the future. I'm then going to start to talk about a project that we've been working on as a group, Kaitiakitanga, in the Eastern Bay of Plenty at Omaio, that we started 5 years ago, and sort of talk through our journey over that period of time and the things that we've learned. And that kind of introduced us through that period in the last 18 months or so. We got introduced to Engineers Without Borders, who became involved in our project and are still involved in our project and have played a hugely important role. Some of the Engineers Without Borders folks are here today. So I'm really going to talk to you about that project and sort of where we're going to out there into the future with that project. And really, the essence of my talk here today is really about, not just about renewable energy, which is what our work is with Engineers Without Borders, but as a Maori community in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, looking to drive, if you like, community-led development and enterprise in our community that's owned by and led by our community. Kaitiakitanga is sustainability. And I grew up with my grandparents as a child. There was no such word, but we were taught the principles of sustainability. And she would talk to us, my grandmother, and she would say when we'd go diving for kai, or go up into the forest and go and catch food. When we had enough, our grandparents would say to us, kanti. And what kanti means is that's enough. Leave some for tomorrow and leave some for the other whānau. And so we've really grown up as Maori people, certainly in our community, with these embedded principles of sustainable development. Sustainable economic development, sustainable social development, sustainable environmental development. And if we get all those things right and working, that means we sustain ourselves as people because we sustain our culture. That's what Kaitiakitanga is to us. Here's my little introduction into what's going on in the Maori economy. And again, the reason I put this up here for you to think about is really an important source of engineering type projects that I think you as young engineers should have on your radar. In this piece of work that was done by an economist, an Indian guy called Ganesh Nana, he started to measure what was going on in the Maori economy, and he assessed that the Maori economy today has an estimated value of around $37 billion. If you look at that chart up there, you'll see that the Maori economy is concentrated in the primary sector. So farming, fishing, we own half of the fishing industry. In a roundabout way, we've probably got 30 or 40% interest in farming. And we're really, really big in forestry, in indigenous forestry after the government. We're the biggest single owner of indigenous forests in this country. And as you look down that chart, you can start to see through time, we've started to spread our wings into a whole lot of other things. But the fundamental basis of the Maori economy is around the primary sector. And so just think about it in terms of the opportunity, if you like, for engineering expertise and skills to be applied to lift the productivity, because that's the other thing that Ganesh observed in his study. The Maori economy is big, but it's underperforming. The productivity of Maori assets is not at its potential. Farms, fish, etc. So you think about it in those terms. Here's a little bit of number crunching that I did around those numbers. If you compare the Maori economy to the non-Maori economy through that period of time, you find an interesting thing that's going on. You compare the compound annual growth rate between those two economies. What you find is the Maori economy is growing year on year at about 15% per annum, compared to the rest of the economy growing at about 3 or 4%. And there's a high probability that that growth rate will continue. Roll that forward, and this is kind of those projections forward. This is kind of what the numbers are telling us. It's growing and growing fast. So really, for you as young engineering students, think about the opportunity in working with Maori. And to work with Maori successfully, you need to think a little bit differently, which is really where I want to leave that discussion and move on to what we've been doing as a Maori community up there on the coast. Here's just a few summary points about what I've just said. That number is big, but it's underperforming. It's growing fast. A lot of that growth is happening under the radar. People don't see it. You don't see it in the media, but it's happening, as confirmed by these numbers. 1.2 million hectares of underutilised Māori land, massive opportunity. And I hold this really strong view around science, technology, engineering are fundamental enablers for that growth to continue. Here's where we are. So I'm starting to get down to our little project in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. And I just listened to a really fascinating couple of talks in the other room. And Susan was talking about, what can we do about it? This view that, what can we do about these problems of unsustainability? And, it was almost a feeling of helplessness, that the powers of big corporations and stuff, it's hard to change their behaviour. The thing I point out here, in our little community, up there is where I've come from this morning. Out there, over the last year or so, you might have seen some of the whānau, some of the cousins out there protesting against Petrobras. And they got arrested for going out there and protesting because they did not want international energy companies coming into New Zealand in our backyard and making a mess like what we've seen in the Gulf of Mexico and elsewhere. So I guess my point is that I think, especially for young people like you, don't feel helpless about some of these things. Get out there and start making the noise. We've got an election coming up in Wellington in a month or two's time. There's the time to start making some noise. But that's where our project is. At Karamea, that's where we started our little project. One of the other hats I wear is I've been a member of the New Zealand negotiating team for the United Nations on climate change policy. And while I was sitting up there in different parts of the world in these big negotiations, I had my nieces and nephews sending me emails and saying to me, "Oh, Uncle, awesome. We saw you on TV with all those people. Awesome." There's a real important message, it got me thinking back then, 5 years or so ago, because what my nieces and nephews were saying to me was, "We feel helpless at home. We think what you're doing up there is hugely important for us to have a voice in those discussions. But what can we do at home?" And that's what got us started, at home. Sitting down on the marae and starting to think about some practical ways to start, in our own little way, moving forward on these big issues that are facing our country, us as Māori, but the planet. And that's really what gave rise to what we've been doing. And this is a little bit about who we are as Māori. We've got no money. We're not for profit. We sit there on the marae and we think about things like how do we create jobs? How do we look after our lands? How do we look after our families, our rivers? The other thing I should have pointed out back there, that red stuff there is Māori land. It's communally owned land. No individual person owns that land. It's all owned by all of us as whānau. It can never be sold, that land. That's actually a massive opportunity, not just for us. In my view, it's a massive opportunity for New Zealand. Because we never sell that land to any multinational who would come in here and just trade that land. It belongs to us. It is the essence of who we are. So, this is our mission. We sat in the marae and wrote this. just there as a bunch of whānau thinking about these issues and the challenges. How can we do something about this stuff? That's who we are. And my nieces and nephews said, well, where are we going to start on these big issues? This is what we started doing on our own land, spraying weeds along our beaches, along our rivers, through all of these kinds of little working bees. We got together with no money, started scrounging around. I'm pretty good at scrounging around the world for people to come and help us. That's how we ended up with Rob and the guys at Engineers Without Borders, but I'll come to that. But this is what we started doing, a whole bunch of practical things at home. We became really quite successful at doing that kind of stuff, and people started taking notice of us, like central government and regional governments and local governments and big companies and universities and all sorts of people, just by doing this kind of stuff. So we started talking to the science communities, the universities and all the other things, and they all came on board, the University of Otago, Niwa, Sion and others, working with us, doing some really, really cool projects, practical things happening on the ground over the last few years. So we started to gain some traction. We thought, well, then I was sitting at the marae one day, and one of my aunties said to me, oh, you know, all that other stuff's been pretty good, but we've got to have a think about the power. And I said, oh, what do you mean, auntie? She goes, the price of power is going too high. And we're struggling. Our whānau is struggling because low-income Maori communities, every time the power goes up, our incomes for our whānau are fixed and fixed low, so we feel it hard. And so that's what got us thinking about we need to do something about this power problem in our community. And that's what gave rise to this. We had no money and started thinking about, well, what are we going to do? So we set some goals. These were our goals. We wanted to create a company, an energy company that we owned. Our community owns this energy company to do all these things and create jobs and do all sorts of other things. But along the way, there were for us some things that were not negotiable to anyone. Governments, big corporations, universities, anyone. And these are these things. We'd never let anyone come in and maybe register mortgages over our land. They would put our land at risk. And we'd never sit back and let anyone come in and tell us what to do, because we're sick of people coming and telling us what to do. They come in, they promise the world, and then change the government or change the philosophy, change the policy, and then they leave. Nothing happens. So this is not negotiable, these two things for us. And it's been the basis of all the relationship we've struck so far, is those things are not negotiable. That's some of our project team. That's Uncle Waka. These are actually my sister's been involved in planting uhuntukawas along our beach. And that's the sunset going out over our hill at Pokahini there at Mai. So those are our goals, those are our non-negotiables. These are our key drivers for our energy project, to work on those things. Driven by us, we've got no money. To do all of those things, but really to create something that's a pilot on an energy company that we own, never been done before in New Zealand. So we wanted to create a pilot that we could maybe replicate and roll out with the other 1,200 marae in New Zealand. And that's where we got introduced to Engineers Without Borders, through a relationship that we struck with the Hirurangi Foundation, who introduced us to Engineers Without Borders, and Rob sitting there, and Sam Davies is sitting in the room here somewhere, and we formed this relationship. They came to us and they said, every year, we run this thing called the Odyssey Design Challenge. Some of you might be aware of it. Awesome project. And they asked us if we would be happy to put our project up, if you like, as a design challenge to the last year's engineering students from this university, Auckland Institute of Technology and Auckland University. And they said, well, if they can help move our project forward, give us some technical advice, absolutely. But there was something that I said to them as we were scoping and mapping this out. The intention was that this project was really going to be a desktop exercise done from the universities remotely. And I said to them, no way. We have to bring the students into our community. How will they really understand what's going on in our community, the kind of drivers and the things that John talked about earlier on, the ethical issues that really underpin us, things like we never sell our land. And so we made them come to our community. And we took them out and we showed them our lands, we showed them our forests, showed them the rivers that we own, and we held a session on the weekend. And it was cool, and they all loved it. It was pouring with rain though. It was pouring with rain and they disappeared. I went to the marae on the Sunday morning and someone said to me, oh, they're all gone. I said, what do you mean they're all gone? I said, oh, Danny took them up into the hills. And this Danny, cousin Danny, and they were wandering around up in the hills looking at streams, looking at the micro-hydro opportunities. And so they did that over 3 or 4 months, and they had to produce a concept plan, and then they had to produce a business case, 20-page detailed business case. And then they were all invited, was it 7 or 8 teams? They had to come back and present their business case. They had 7 minutes. Their team had to present in a Dragon's Den competition to 2 investors, 2 from our community, and 2 engineers. And from that, we would pick the top 3, which is what we did. And these were 2 of the top 3. This team, they come 3rd, but I put that one up there because they actually found that this carving that's done by one of our people, Cliff Whiting. He's a renowned artist in New Zealand, and they came back. This was one of the winners. This was one that actually won, and the other one was from Canterbury University. They were stunning. I have to say, all of the applications were stunning. We picked the top 3, and then we made them go back to the marae and present to the whānau, and everyone loved it. And now those kids really feel like they're part of our community, and our community feel like they're a part of each and every one of those students. We think we've grown a resource there that we'll keep in contact with going forward. But it was stunning work. What they came back with was effectively some hybrid models. Some hybrid kind of models that look at maybe solar farming, wind farming, individual household projects, and using wood waste from our forests. These guys came up with a similar plan, and the other guys came up with a similar plan as well. From there, we've got a whole bunch of lawyers in Chatham Trip now working with us, pro bono, probably the best commercial lawyers in this country now working with us to design the legal structures around how we will house this project. And this is kind of what they've come up with so far. This is about where we're at right now. We still haven't confirmed this, but this is really where we're at right now. So there's our maraes, here's our landowners down here, and here's the various enterprises. Here's the renewable energy one. We have a parallel land-based aquaculture model project underway right now for over the hill in Ngāti. And then we've got this discussion starting to develop as well around greenhouse development using energy, renewable energy as a power source. So that's kind of where that stuff is at right now. Our New Zealand partner strategy. So we've got no money, so we're flat out trying to find people that can help us. So we've got formed relationships with all these people who are really hugely interested and keen in what we've been doing. This has really just happened over the last 12 months. Big energy companies, big forestry companies, Maori Land Court, other people, researchers, who are all in some way, shape or form involved in our project. We've also, through Engineers Without Borders, looked at setting up a specialist and expert advisory panel to work with us to refine the business cases that were developed by the students. So we've got at that point now there where these folks here all have agreed to work with us to develop those business cases. Susan, who I've just listened and talked to on the other side there, Stacey and Richard, who both came to our marae back in March and presented their thinking in terms of what they see as the next steps. We've also got an international partner strategy where last year and this year I've tripped around through Europe, through the leading technology institutes through Europe, and we're now forming relationships with every one of those institutes there to work with us on each of those 3 projects. The Renewable Energy Project. These guys are stunning. I spent time with every one of these guys. These guys are in France, Germany, England, France, Netherlands, Germany, that one there, UK, France. So we've got our wings, if you like, our tentacles spread around the world to linking in with all of these people to help our project, and they're all keen to work with us. Another piece of work that I'm leading, I won't go on this too much, is about how do we use energy to grow food. This is kind of the next steps. So our project plan, to get to, by the end of this year, I want to see some real practical things happening on the ground. We've got audits happening, I'll hold through our community. Energy audits, those are just about done now, I think, Rob. And this is probably the key thing for me right now, is to appoint somebody full-time, ideally one of our own technical person to drive this project going forward. Because we've got so many things going on at the moment. If you think back, over the period of about 12 months, we started with an idea. And now we've got all of these different people working with us to move this thing and make it real. One of the other things I've done, I want to show briefly, is I was up in Canada in February, working with some Indigenous Indian people. It's a short video about what they've done.
Everything is connected. And it's so true, everything is connected here. And that's what we have to do, is to be able to know that Mother Earth has a way of taking care of itself. And our elders say that if we don't take care of it, Mother Earth will do it for you. Maybe it's time for all of us to get up and do something.
You've got remote communities, northern communities with no heating at all now. So you've got a health crisis on your hands, you've got a huge mess. And that mess can be entirely avoided by a mixture of conservation and renewable energy and smart energy management. And that's exactly what's happening here with the super.
We wanted a vision that was truly reflective of the whole community, that everybody could see themselves in this collective vision. What came out of visioning was the importance of having a sustainable community. To be autonomous in energy is a powerful thing to be able to do. Every family on reserve had somebody involved in this project and were totally committed to it. When you think about Soup Nation, which is a tiny group on the edge of Vancouver Island, developing probably the most solar-intensive community in Canada, it's quite an achievement for a small band.
This photovoltaic project is twice as large as any other solar project in British Columbia. They really accepted this project really well, and they've actually done the installing of all of these components.
It's one of the largest installations here in BC, and it's not very often that we get to work with the people that we install it for. We really couldn't have done it without all the helpers here at Soup Nations.
For us, it's building capacity from within, training our people, training our young people, and also looking at impacts, looking at what we can see in the next 10, 20 years, and also always looking ahead at the 7 generations. And the thing is what are we going to look like 100 years from now? We could really look at this as a new way. There's an opportunity here to put some people to work, to train some people and do some new technology in this area that will help all of us.
And it's definitely been fun seeing the South community owning this kind of technology. That one has 228 PV panels, and this one has 128. And so this is the meter, and as you can see, the arrow shows the way it should be turning when you are using power, so most people that's how it is. But because we are selling back power, it's spinning the other way.
I think everyone is on the same page when taking care of Mother Earth. And I think we can network with other First Nations to get the word out. And also British Columbians and Canadians alike, if we all got together, we can make change. And I think that's what we got to do, positive change.
So we built into this project right from the start that we were going to disseminate this information. But that was what was behind this gathering, was to invite everybody to come and share the information and share the lessons that we've learned and the enthusiasm.
Viewers, no more power. Ground.
We're looking forward to having all other people come to our village to gain information, and I think we all have to do this together, and this is a good way to start.
This today in Soup is an extraordinary example of what I can take back to Ottawa, because what Chief Planus has done and members of the South First Nation is they've actually done an extraordinary act of leadership here by the solar project. A lot of communities don't have the focus, the leadership, the knowledge, but the South First Nation has all of that.
It's a way the solar electricity and the solar hot water. We can say that we have done it, and we have the proof as in my house and some of the other houses around here, and the photovoltaic on the roofs there. So, you know, we've done it.
They might say, well, it's only one small community, but it's role modeling for everyone else. Because most people want to change by looking and seeing, not by reading an academic report.
I'm going to stop there. I'm just mindful of time. I think there's a couple of important points I want to make about that video, and then just wrap up. You know, that comment that he just made, that, you know, most people want to look at some real practical things and not reading academic reports. Well, I hold to that view really strongly, and that's really the basis of what we're trying to do in our own community, is to actually demonstrate practical projects as a way of moving and changing behaviour through practical projects. Now, you probably, bright young minds like you studying out there in engineering, look at that and think, well, that's just such a no-brainer, because it is such a no-brainer. But you have to say, you know, it's a real great example of, you know, real leadership on these basic fundamental problems that we're facing as communities, as countries, if you like, and the world. You know, these guys showcasing that. And that was the value for me of meeting that particular chief and a whole bunch of other Indian chiefs up in Canada, is seeing them as Indigenous people practically doing these things and taking those lessons home back to our marae, because many in our community, when we started, you know, looking at us and our project team like we're dreaming. You know, you're dreaming trying to do these things, but we're not. And by showing these real-life examples of the other Indigenous people that have done it, is a really, really helpful way of moving, you know, the debate and changing behaviour forward. It was great, and I really enjoyed it, and we're working with those guys now. We've agreed to share things that we're learning about other things with them. And believe it or not, through some of the contacts that we've struck with these folks, every year the First Nations people of the US have a standing invitation to have a discussion with President Barack Obama. They've extended an invitation to us as iwi to join with them, to have a debate and discussion with Barack Obama sometime in the next 12 months over these big issues. So that's another one of the things that we get out of these relationships with these other Indigenous people of the world. Moving forward. So, 2 or 3 slides just to wrap up. So you heard that guy talking about, you know, the success of some of these things. So I wanted to just sort of benchmark what we've been doing versus what, say, the South people have been doing up in British Columbia, talking about leadership, focus, knowledge, growing people, etc. And just went along the side there, just tick, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, of the things that they set out to achieve. Compared that to ourselves, and pretty much every one of those things we've been able to tick as well. In less than, you know, in a year to a year and a half, it's taken us. It took them 10 years to achieve what you saw in that video, and pretty much it's taken us about 18 months to go from basically nothing to where we are today. 18 months. And I keep, as Rob will contest, I keep pushing the team. We're not going fast enough. What's wrong? Why is this not happening? Why are the bloody lawyers not dealing with these issues? Right? But really, it's because my aunties keep banging me and saying, what the hell are you fellas doing? That's a fact. You know, they're really hammering me and saying, how come you haven't done that bloody thing yet? And that's why it translates down to our team. What the hell's going on? So we unashamedly want to go as fast as we can. Because there's real problems out there. We're just going to sit around and wait for the government to do something. Government policy just swings round and round and round in circles. I know we've got massive challenges ahead of us, but that hasn't stopped us from pushing on. So, second to last slide. I started off with talking about my grandmother, talking to us about Kaitiakitanga and what that meant for us. It's economic growth. It's looking after our land that we'll never sell. And so therefore we're linked to our land for generations, and we typically talk in terms of 100 years. That's normal for us. It's 100 years. Show me any other company in this country that has a business plan that extends more than, say, 5. 100 years is normal. And that's tied back to our land. That's why. We're never going anywhere. And growing people, that's the other thing the aunties always say, well, what are you going to do for our kids? How many jobs are you going to create for our kids? So that's why we've got to focus right now on employing our first project manager, who will be one of our own kids, who's been off like you and studied at undergraduate level or master's degree level, and we've got them. And that's the other thing I didn't say, that the discussions we're having with the international institutes in Europe, they want to take some of our Māori kids into Europe to learn chemical engineering, mechanical engineering. And so we're flat out trying to get some of them up there into Fraunhofer in Germany. Which brings me to that next point. Technology, engineering is fundamental to this for us. While governments are procrastinating on policy, the leadership, is my point, it comes from us. Nobody tells us what to do, not governments or anyone, because governments come and go. It comes from us, and I really want to end on that point and really acknowledge God and all of the guys at Engineers Without Borders. We truly value the relationship we form with Engineers Without Borders. It gets a bit of a struggle because they're down here and we're up there, but nevertheless, one of them, Faisal, he's living in bloody Paris now doing his PhD on energy, but he's still involved, and it's great. Yeah, we've got these links with these really, really bright young minds, so we think of them as part of our community. Ellen Palmer, any of you guys know Ellen? Yep, yeah, she's pretty cool, that girl. She's really, really bright, and she was involved in that, not just Ellen too, I shouldn't just single her out. All of them. And so the last word for me comes from one of our own young girls. Now I talked to you about these young nieces and nephews of mine, and they keep sending me these emails and they see me on TV and stuff. Well, here's one of them. There's Anna. And Anna's been involved, growing up, watched that little girl grow up, from little girl right up now, been involved all the way through our project, picking up rubbish on our beaches and planting puntakawas and different things there. Anna's now got double degrees. In fact, she's going on to her third one now. She's a graduate as a lawyer in social science, I think, something else. But Anna was invited to go off and talk about our project to a suite of people, government people in Japan. And that's her comment, what she said. You know, they see this project as an ideal model of collaboration that they would like to follow. It's humbling knowing that our whānau project is being as a leader in collaborative projects for these countries. That was her. And I think that's the greatest payback for me and for us, is growing our own kids into this space. And that's how we will truly be sustainable, is to grow all of those young kids to actually pick up and drive these projects forward. The aquaculture project, we've got a couple of them now going off and doing marine biology degrees, so that they can come home and run these projects. So truly be sustainable, grow our own kids who will be here, mai rānō. So with that, I'm going to close, and I know Alex is probably panicking somewhere saying I'm going on over time. Kia ora.
Really inspirational, fantastic presentation, and really interesting project. And for Engineers Without Borders to be involved in this, I think is a privilege. Thank you for that opportunity. Unfortunately, we don't have